Thank you for tuning in on Facebook Live for our special investment insight on this Wednesday. I appreciate your time. Please, we like to be more interactive, so please, if you have any questions, please put them in the comment section so that the girls can ask me, and then we'll answer the questions throughout our presentation today. As it looks at the moment, it's very good the stimulus bill is going to pass. Today, for the conversation is, what's the stimulus bill look like? What's the Federal Reserve doing? What's the way forward for markets? And where do we go from here? And so, obviously, with social distancing occurring, we hope that you and your family are finding ways to stay busy and enjoy this new economy. And every time we have a recession, the economy changes. And so the changes you're seeing today are things that we'll talk about for the rest of our lives. You know, as a person told me, this may be what Grandpa said, when I walked to school with 5 feet of snow, you know, uphill both ways, this is kind of the moment where we're seeing that. You're seeing that with Amazon delivering stuff online, and Walmart doing in-store delivery, and restaurants now delivering to houses. I mean, this is going to be the norm. You know, now that people expect to get food at their house, not just pizza, guess what we're going to see? More food coming to your house, more changes. Since the 1930s, there have been 14 recessions and 14 bull markets, actually. And each bull market starts after a recession. And most of the time, when we go through a recession, the market actually tends to go up when the recession is actually official. And so if you remember in 2009, many people lost their jobs. The market dropped in 2008, but in 2009, the S&P 500 had over a 26% return. Because a lot of times, the market is the first indicator of what could happen or what will happen. And so markets will go up and down often before recessions are over. And so thanks for obviously tuning in today. I love this Warren Buffett quote. You know, a lot of people say, when's the bottom going to hit? I want to buy at the bottom. And you know, Warren Buffett famously in 2008, when the stock market had lost half of what it was going to lose, put a paper in the New York Times. I'm buying now. I'm buying now. He wasn't trying to buy the lowest spot. He was trying to buy close to the lowest spot, trying to get a good deal. And one of his great quotes is, price is what you pay, and value is what you get. If you're always trying to find the lowest price of a car, guess what? Someone's probably going to find a lower price of that same car. You know, when you look at it, what is the goal here in mind? What is the end goal we're trying to achieve? Now, obviously, when it comes to recessions, every 3.5 years, historically, we have a recession. Every 3.5 years, we have a bear market. We haven't had a lot of those. In 2018, we got real close. Markets were down about 19.9%. But it wasn't 20%. 20% is technically considered a recession. And in 2019, because we fell 19.9%, that wasn't counted. 2011, we had 2 times when the market fell about 19.9%. And both those times aren't counted. So technically those aren't counted. But you know, if you're down 20% or 19.9, to me that feels about the same. And so that's what we're looking at for recession. The good news about the coronavirus is it is not like the 2008 crisis. It's different. In 2008, we had a debt crisis. We had too much debt, and it took years to pay off that debt, years to recover. This appears to be, based on China's example, a 8 to 12 week thing where economic activity stops and then starts returning to normal. You know, 2008 took years for the housing and real estate markets to recover. Really, until about 2 or 3 years ago, the real estate market is still not recovered. So it took almost a decade for housing to recover. And this should not be that one in this case. And also, if we think about 2001, you know, 9/11, we are still dealing with today. We are still trying to end terrorism. You know, we're still spending billions of dollars to fight terrorism. So at the end of the day, that's been going on for 20 years. And so more than likely, it'll still be going on well after the coronavirus has been treated. The good news is, when we look at viruses and capitalism works. If you're familiar with Magic Johnson is alive today. He's HIV positive because there are companies like Gilead Sciences which have not cured AIDS or HIV, but what they've done is they've made it treatable. And so very likely with coronavirus, we're going to see those same things. If you think about epidemics in our past, polio, the measles, these are things that we've gotten vaccines for. But with viruses, which is a viral thing, you're probably looking more like a treatment. Tamiflu is a very common treatment to use on the flu. And clearly, the coronavirus is a very bad virus with a high mortality rate. So hopefully, a lot of these viruses tend to go away during the summertime. So hopefully this will be no different. And maybe that'll give us time to find an effective treatment for the coronavirus. So let's talk a little bit about what the Federal Reserve has been doing. As you may have noticed, at the end of the day, the stimulus bill, which has been agreed on by both parties, a senator from Vermont has said that he is going to try to hold the bill up. The good news is they can't hold the bill up for a few days, but they cannot hold it permanently, because eventually it will go to a vote and it will pass, because there's bipartisan support for the stimulus bill. And time is of the essence. When you think about people that are in the restaurant and the airplane and hotel industry, they need to get this bill passed very quickly, because we do not want to see them lose their jobs because of a 3 or 4 day halt. They won't. Corporations, people know this is coming. And so the Federal Reserve has been the big hero for the market. And if you guys remember 2008, everybody thought this is a very similar situation. There was a panic, and there was worry, and there was great fear. And if you remember, in September of 2008, they passed a major stimulus bill. But really, the fear about the economy had begun in December of 2017. And so it took about a year, and then of course when President Obama became president, he passed another stimulus bill. It took over a year for them really to do significant legislation addressing the financial crisis. Right now, the Federal Reserve has done amazing things in the last 2 weeks. And now it's like Congress has agreed on a stimulus bill as well. So in the last 2 weeks, they've done as much as what the government and Federal Reserve did in about a year in 2008. And so that's the very thing to take confidence in. If you haven't noticed, interest rates for the first time in U.S. history went negative today. 1 and 3 month treasuries went negative. And that's exactly what it means. You put in X amount of money, and guess what you get? Less back. And that's what happened this morning. The first time in American history you can say, I lived in a time when I put money in the bank and they gave me less than I put in. And this is not true for local banks. This is true for the treasury market. But our local banks, when they invest their money, they have to put their money into mortgage bonds or treasury bonds. So they're buying treasury bonds right now. So when you look at CD interest rates, they're probably going down, not going up, based on what we saw today. Quantitative easing has started again. One of the things the Federal Reserve did in 2010, I believe, or 2011, is they were concerned the mortgage market was not improving fast enough. So what they wanted to do was lower those mortgage rates so that people could afford a house. And they could get real estate prices to start appreciating again. And so when we look at what the Federal Reserve announced, the first was they were going to do quantitative easing on a certain level. Well, last week they announced they would do unlimited quantitative easing. Or basically, they would buy as many mortgage bonds as necessary to cause interest rates to go down, to make mortgages more affordable. That's a big thing, because in essence, that is almost $2 trillion plus, even bigger than the stimulus bill, as the Federal Reserve is going to spend over $2 trillion to try to keep interest rates low. That's a big thing. Commercial paper. If you're not familiar with commercial paper is where major U.S. corporations borrow money for a short period of time. So if you can imagine, if you're a corporation or business, you have, you put in your company savings account, your payroll account, that money goes into a short-term lending mechanism. At one point last week, short-term commercial paper was paying 2.5%. Well, Taylor and Streeter, what do you guys think? If interest rates are negative on a 1-month loan on treasuries and commercial interest rates are up to 2.5%, what does that mean? Well, it means that corporations are paying a huge premium over banks. And here's the thing, do you pay more interest if you're at risk or less?
More.
Right? So what that is telling us is that the commercial paper market was expecting 10 to 15 major U.S. corporations to go bankrupt in the next 30 days. Okay, and that's what we were looking at last week on Tuesday. So the Federal Reserve came in and said, you know what we're going to do? We are going to back, like FDIC insurance to a degree, all commercial paper for major corporations in America. Which meant that every major corporation in America would have access to money if they can afford to pay it back. The last time we saw that was in 2008, when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. If you can look back at 2008, probably the greatest single mistake anyone made in 2008 was not bailing out this company. Because if they had bailed this company out and restructured it, we probably would not have suffered the degree of damage we saw in 2008. And guess what the Federal Reserve did last week? They backed that market up. And now those rates have gone back down. Through Monday, before the stimulus bill was in essence close to being finalized, the U.S. dollar has risen 8 straight sessions. So let's think about this for a second. If our country is really at risk, what do you girls think? Do you think our money will go up or down?
Down.
Down. So the media is saying every day what?
We're at risk.
We're at risk. Things are in trouble. Everyone's going to die from this disease. You know, blah, 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 blah. And what are financial markets saying about the U.S. dollar? They're going up. Because for the last 8 days, the U.S. dollar till this week was going up. Now, mind you, the Federal Reserve is printing $2 trillion in debt. So if you were to borrow $2 trillion, would your credit score go up or down? What do you guys think?
Probably go down.
Yeah, okay, it's probably not very likely they're going to loan us $2 trillion. But while the Federal Reserve is borrowing $2 trillion, their credit score is actually going up. Because compared to the rest of the world, we look pretty good. Okay, and that's what, sometimes, I guess if you're in a beauty contest and you're a woman, and it's a beauty contest with all mustaches, maybe, it's a bad joke, anyway. The point is, maybe that's what you're looking at is you need to be careful on. And so that's really where, when we look at the U.S. dollar, that is the bottom line. And so, another thing the Federal Reserve did is they worked with major central banks in Germany, Australia, Japan, and China, because literally the rest of the world, they've been running out of dollars for the last 8 days. Do you guys hear what I said? They've been running out of dollars. And so the Federal Reserve went in and said, you know what, we're going to give you as many dollars as you need. Now that doesn't seem like a big deal. But Sharita and Taylor, you almost get picking on you. What do you think? If you were in Russia, do you want Russian money or do you want U.S. money?
Russian. I want U.S.
I want U.S. money because I don't trust my government in Russia. Right? If you're in China, do you want U.S. money or Chinese money?
U.S.
If you're in Iran, do you want Iranian money or U.S. money?
U.S.
There are actually more dollars in circulation outside of the United States than inside the United States. Because in the country of Ecuador, they don't even have a currency. You know what Ecuador uses money? U.S. dollars. And so, when you look at it, every time the Federal Reserve in the last 2 weeks has faced a crisis, they have acted on it. They have done what our politicians did not do quick enough. People like to complain about the Federal Reserve, but guess what? They've done a lot of really good things in the last 2 weeks that are going to impact the rest of our lives. The 10-year Treasury has dropped to an all-time low of 0.5% last week, but right now it's at 0.8%. That's exactly what it says. You give your money to the federal government for 10 years, guess how much you get a year? 0.8%. Now, if you're not aware already, the stock market has gone up almost 11% in the last 2 days. So literally, if you bought the close of business on Monday, sold this evening, you would have made more money in the stock market in 2 days than someone's going to make in 10 years at the current rate. And so that indicates that it's very likely that CD rates and cash investments are going to be going what? Way down and probably even lower. The interest rates are going to even get lower and lower. And there's many reasons for this. You know, we don't get into morality of what's right and wrong, but that obviously helps stock market. It obviously hurts a CD investment. Another thing the Federal Reserve did, this is probably the biggest move, is all federal taxes owed on April 15th are now owed July 15th. They gave a 4-month reprieve on paying their taxes. Now that's a huge deal, right? Because any business that has to pay taxes from last year, they get what? 4 more months to come up with the money. So how long, Taylor and Trina, how long is this coronavirus? How long do you guys think it'll probably last?
At least like 3 more months.
Probably 3 months, right?
Yeah.
So if you do the math on this, if it's March, right? What's the day? March 26th?
25th.
25th. If you don't have to pay your taxes till July, this thing lasts 3 months, do you think they're going to extend that July deadline later on?
Probably.
Yeah, if it takes more than 3 months, taxes probably aren't going to be due July 15th. And guess, did they do October 15th?
Probably not.
What happens in November?
Election.
So more than likely, any taxes owed from last year may not be due till when?
Next year.
A year from now. Now that's a huge economic indicator because you think about it, U.S. income taxes that people pay are over $1 trillion for a yearly basis. Now obviously that's not all paid at the end, but the highest tax collection time of the year is April 15th. The government gets most of their money by far on April 15th. And now that money's being delayed what? Maybe a full year. Now, I don't know what the total is going to be for this tax season, but we can estimate, and I would say a pretty good guess, that the government is probably going to lose $400 or $500 billion in revenue per year. That's another what? $500 billion in what? Stimulus. Another thing the federal government did is any self-employed person or person that's retired that pays quarterly taxes does not have to make their first quarter payment until July 15th. And guess what's going to happen if the economy, if the businesses start opening up in 3 months? They're probably going to delay what? The quarterly tax is longer. So when we look at, now this is if the virus gets bad. This is if things get worse. If this thing lasts 4 or 5 weeks, it goes away, we all pay our taxes, right? But if things actually get worse, if things actually spread across the country, it's very likely that all the tax payments will get delayed even further. And I would argue too, it's going to be very hard for anybody to get reelected if they raise taxes dramatically at one point, right? So some of these taxes might even be what?
Just
Forgotten about. Forget it, you know? So I'm not saying that's the case, but we don't know. But we have to wonder, if you look at the timing of everything, it's probably likely that you should definitely save money for your taxes, but it may be possible that you may not have to pay as much on July 15th as people think. Probably the argument. Okay, so let's talk about the stimulus bill. I'm sure that's why most people have tuned in today. Are you girls excited about all the money you're going to get? Come on, Sheree and Taylor, you guys going to cheer? You guys all at one point were cheerleaders, right? So you guys can tell us what's going on. Do a little pom-pom thing, right? So it's more than likely the stimulus bill. What we know today, we're going to know more in the future. And one of the things we're going to do here at McKay Wealth Advisory is we hope every week to have a short video or a couple times a week of different things going on and different high points, maybe talking about one topic in the stimulus bill. So we're going to have much more information to come. It's very likely this will not be the last stimulus bill for this virus. if we've seen anything the last 4 weeks, is the Federal Reserve has acted very quickly. Congress has acted. They will probably act what? Again. Because there's always things people miss. Okay. So the bill is estimated to be over $2 trillion. It's a lot of zeros. It's a heck of a lot of zeros. Just to give you indication here, our economy was expected to be about $21 trillion this year. Now let's put some math on this. There's $2 trillion stimulus bill, right? Girls, how much was the Federal Reserve using? Remember? About $2 trillion plus. We're going to estimate that taxes not being paid equals another what? 500 billion? So just to give you some numbers here. We know that businesses slowed down. But between the Federal Reserve, the government, and people not paying taxes, you're looking at almost 20 plus to 25% of the entire economy is being spent in the next 8 weeks. Doesn't that give you an idea of how big what they're throwing at this problem is? And we all know the economy slowed down, but some people are still working. Do you think the people at Domino's Pizza are working?
Yeah.
How about the people at Foodland in Manchester and Kroger in McMinnville? You think they're still working? Walmart? They're working. So certain people are very, Amazon is aiming to hire 100,000 people in this crisis. 100,000 people. Now here's the thing. Once you get used to getting any food you want delivered to your house, who's going to want to give that up?
Nobody.
Nobody. So it's going to change things permanently. This is going to impact our lives forever. But what you're seeing is they are literally throwing, in essence, 25% of our entire economy to fix this problem right now. So even if everybody wasn't working and nobody was getting paid, they are spending more money than we would have made normally in this period of time. By far. It's not even close. And that gives you an idea of how big what is in store is happening. How big things are going on. So let me give you the details. So, I don't know if I've made it clear to girls here because I can't see all your faces online. But they're doing a lot of things. They're spending a lot of money. I will tell you it's probably not the most efficient way to do things, but I will tell you this is going to have an impact. What they're doing is going to help people in need, certain people. And they should be doing something, regardless of your political beliefs. No one's fault. This virus is nobody's fault. Nobody, this isn't people borrowing money they can't afford. This isn't a terrorist blowing a building up. This is a disease that got loose that is uncontrollable at the moment. Most controllable if we stay with you. So what are the details? Most adults are going to get $1,200, and most children get $500, unless you make more than $75,000 a year. Now this has broad implications, right? Because there's things you can do with charity and other stuff to stay below $75,000. But if you make less than $75,000 a year, you're going to get $1,200, and per kid you're going to get $500. So that's going to help. They're going to give $500 billion to states and cities. States and cities are going to get $500 billion. Which we have more details to follow. I do apologize. A lot of the details haven't come out yet because the bill hadn't even been passed yet. $367 billion is going to companies with payrolls. Now, we don't really understand this yet, but the way this works is, the way it's supposed to work, is they're going to loan money to a company if they keep their employees on the payroll, keep their payroll the same. So here at my office, or our office, we have roughly 5 people on the payroll. So what they're going to do is they're going to take a snapshot of my last quarterly or my monthly tax payment. Says, I paid this much in payroll, I had this many employees, they're going to look at that and say, if I keep doing this, if I'm a qualified business, they're going to pay me back a portion of that money. Now, we don't know what that number is, but when the fires in California, and they did the same bill last year, they paid 60% of wages up to a total of $6,000 a month in income. So if you made less than $72,000 a year, the government was writing a check for 60% of those salaries. Okay? Now, let's be honest. If the government was really smart, that's all they would do. Pay everybody's salary who was working before for the next 8 to 12 weeks as long as you don't fire them. It costs less money, and everybody would keep their job. Wouldn't that have been the smartest thing they could have done? Yeah. This right here is easier. They are going to do it some though. Now, we don't know the exact details yet. We know if it's 60%, 80%, 100%. All we can look at is the barometer of what they did last year that worked effectively in California. Okay? And this has worked well then, or they're probably doing it.
Same thing.
They're probably copying it now. This right here helps Social Security, right? Because if you're still working, are you paying Social Security taxes? Yes. Are you paying income taxes? Yes. If I give you money but you're not working, do you pay those taxes on Social Security? No. So if you're a retiree and you're living off Social Security, you should like this. You probably shouldn't like that. Because how much money is going to Social Security fund if someone's unemployed? So the point is, that's one thing that makes a big difference. It also helps Medicare, right? Because every time someone works an office, they work an hour, we pay Medicare taxes. We pay unemployment taxes. If you fire people, that money comes out of the state unemployment budget. If you keep on the payroll, it doesn't. So by far, the biggest part of this bill, the best thing we see as investors, is the money going to people that had jobs before this started. They get to keep their jobs and get a portion of their income paid to the employer. That is by far the biggest thing. Now, hopefully, they're going to cover 100%. Because let's be honest, if you're a waiter at Applebee's, and they offer to pay 100% of your salary, is Applebee's going to probably keep you? Yeah. If they pay 60%, they're going to keep you? Probably not, unless you can drive a delivery truck. Right? Because that waiter or waitress, they don't need them anymore. Because they already had the cooks, right? So now all they need is people that can do what? Deliver the food. And so what you've done, now let's be honest, if everybody gets out of McMinnville, comes in and they order from Applebee's tonight because we talked about it, they're going to need all those waiters and waitresses. But a lot of people probably aren't going to order out as much food as they would have gotten going to a restaurant. Because,
Take out first.
Yeah, well, because part of it is, like, I go to a restaurant with my kids. Why do you girls think I go to a restaurant with my kids?
So you don't have to cook?
I don't have to cook. What else?
You don't gotta clean it
I
up.
don't have to clean up. If you bring all that stuff to my house, I still got to what?
Clean it
I
up.
still got to clean it up. And so that's one of the things that makes a big difference. And so this right here, even though it's not the most expensive thing, I would argue is the most effective thing the stimulus bill does for the economy. Another big thing it does is they're going to allow companies to defer the 6.2% tax on Social Security. So we talked about income taxes being deferred. Well, now they're going to let certain companies, and we don't know if every company is going to qualify for this. More than likely, financial services companies will not qualify, but factories will. But they're going to give most companies the ability, it looks like, to defer their Social Security tax payment. Now, it goes back. If they keep deferring taxes, what eventually happens?
They probably will go away.
They'll probably go away. If you remember when President Obama did his stimulus bill, he lowered the Social Security taxes on individuals from 6.2 to 4.2 for 2 years. Or I think it was a year or two. This one right here is lowering it on the companies for here. Because the whole thing about this is, are you better off having the federal government pay people or have businesses keep people's jobs? If you look at this stimulus bill, what's different about this stimulus bill, think about the George W. Bush stimulus bill and the President Obama stimulus bill, is both those bills focused on helping unemployed people. bill is more focused on what? Trying to keep the companies keep people employed. Because you'd rather keep people employed than it's like this. Would you rather use stitches on a gash to your face or not get cut in the face? Right? Not get cut in the face. And so that's what we're really looking at here is you're trying to fix the problem before it ever happens. And that's what is so neat about what we're seeing here is we're seeing people being proactive before things get really bad versus waiting till what? Everybody loses their job. And those are really, when you look at a philosophical political approach, you see a very different political approach from different parties based on that perspective. Okay. $150 billion is going in aid to U.S. hospitals. Now, obviously, if you're in McMinnville and Manchester, most rural hospitals in our area are struggling. Girls, why do you think McMinnville and Manchester hospitals are struggling? It'd be nice.
They might not have.
They don't have the most up-to-date technology.
They're not up to date. They don't maybe have all the physicians that are specialists. Like if you want to get, like I've got a mold problem, sometimes I have to remove from sun exposure, and so I'm probably going to go to Nashville to get that mold removed, right? Because you might not have that dermatologist that can do that kind of surgery. Well, this situation, we have all these we have a hospital in Manchester and Midville that have tons of beds, but they're not what?
No patients.
No patients. Well, this coronavirus, what happens in Italy happens, what's going to happen to those hospitals?
You're going to have patients.
They're going to be full. And so they're giving direct aid to cover some of those costs. And so that's a big thing. And that should help with Midville and Manchester. So let's talk about the $500 billion loan guarantee program. You may have noticed today the single best performing stock in the stock market was Boeing today. And part of that is because of this bill here. $425 billion is going to go to cities and states. Most of the stimulus bill, if you haven't noticed, is really going to bail out local state governments and city governments. $25 billion is going to passenger airlines. And the deal with that is they can't fire any workers involuntarily until September 30th of 2020. So they have to keep their entire staff what? So even though those planes aren't flying, those stewardess for what?
I mean, they're still having to pay them.
They're getting paid. Now, you might have already noticed American Airlines announced a voluntary separation. They're going to pay people a week.
So that's only if it passes?
Yeah. $4 billion for cargo airplanes, and $3 billion for contractor airplanes. Now, when you say contractor, what's a contractor airplane? Well, think about it. When you find those really small planes that you get a ticket with Delta, they're actually a contractor. This plane's a Delta. This is a Delta ticket, but it's operated by what? You know, Joe Smith Airline Group. You know, I'm just saying that's basically what it is. And so that's what they're doing there. But they can't lay anybody off until September of this year. And anybody that takes a loan cannot do a share buyback of stock, and they have to suspend their dividend. So Boeing is going to get a bailout in this deal. By the way, let me tell you this little extra company. One company, some company that's important, is getting $17 billion because they're deemed important to national security. Why do you think Boeing stock was up today? They're probably that $17 billion company. Okay? And they do employ 2 million people indirectly and directly in the United States, so that would be true. And so when you look at the situation here, that is what we're looking at. But no buybacks and no dividends for a year after. And so that's a big deal because a lot of these companies have, instead of saving cash on hand, what do? They bought their stock back. Stock goes down, you can't sell it for as much. You know, one of the things we talked about is, you know, Boeing, you have to click on Boeing, as a company, they've been funding their pension system through stocks, putting stock in there. Well, what happens if you put stock in that was worth $420 a share, and now it's worth $160 a share? You got a lot less money, right? And so that's one of the things about getting your debt under control. And that's one of the most important things as an investor. And if this doesn't show you why you should diversify your investments, well, the stock market's been going down, bonds have been going up. So the thing is, if you're retired, keep 8 to 10 years of what you need is something safe that that hasn't lost money in this market. And that's the whole part of diversification is, prepare for the bad times. Always be thinking, the reason why we rebalanced our portfolios in November of last year was not because we knew the coronavirus was going to come up in December. It's because during good times, you put money back. During bad times, no. If you remember the story of Joseph in the Bible, right? He goes to Pharaoh, says what? 7 good years, 7 bad years. That's why they stored up the granaries for famine. And so those are what we're looking at right here. This also, they've created an oversight board. The oversight board is going to decide who qualifies for the money, who doesn't. Hopefully, we're going to get some very quick rulings. Here's the thing. Our biggest problem as a country right now is not that we're not going to get through this. We're going to get through this. We've been through World War II, World War I, the Spanish flu. We've been through a lot. Okay? The Civil War. The question is, how quickly do we get through this? So every time you slow things down, it isn't hurting people. It has a potential to hurt someone. Because when that waitress, who would have her salary guaranteed, when she loses her job next week, if they don't do something, what does that mean? She can't spend money. She can't go. Now, we know Applebee's as a company is probably going to do great, right? Because now they can sell alcohol to your house, they can send food to your house, and they don't get most of that tip money. That waitress does. Right? So Applebee's can potentially benefit because they're going to sell more food, they're going to sell more beer. But that average worker out there, they're the one that you're trying to protect. And they're the one that we really, that's why you should be buying local. That's why you should be using restaurants. People should use this opportunity to help keep these businesses going. Help keep things going, help keep our community together. So when you look at, these are some numbers here, so some more. So they're also going to give $600 a week extra for 4 weeks to anybody that goes unemployed. They're also going to do employee retention credits we talked about. $150 billion state stimulus funds. $30 billion for emergency education funding. If you think about education, and that what changing education is, no one's going to school, right? So kids still have to learn. So how is education going to change for the future? If you think about it right now, you could probably get the best teacher on the planet to give you a lecture on anything, any topic in the world, right? Whether it be biology, chemistry, mathematics. So why do we have every teacher in America doing their own lesson plan? Well, there's probably a couple really good teachers that should be teaching everybody, and the teachers should spend their time working with kids, helping teach them. Because that's really what we need. And right now, these companies that provide education, I mean, look, 2 + 2 is 4. I don't care how you get there, right? At the end of the day, that's what, hopefully this will bring. Hopefully this will bring education changes, because there's no reason why a kid in South Dakota with a school of 100 people can't have the best chemistry teacher teaching them this day and age. It's crazy. That's what we should have. And that's what we're seeing. The stimulus hopefully will help some of that. $25 billion in emergency transit funding. And they've already spent $100 billion on sick leave, $8.3 billion on testing. But let's be honest. This is the third stimulus bill, but it's probably going to be what? More. But these are the high points what we're seeing here. If anybody has a question about the stimulus bill, ladies, if you got any questions about the stimulus bill, send over.
I got a question.
Okay.
Will it be taxable? Will it be considered like income for 2020?
The
like the
family
checks,
bonus?
Yeah, the checks that people would get.
I've not heard a ruling that, but my guess is yes. But if you're in a lower income tax bracket, most people that make most of the people that pay taxes in America make over $75,000 a year. So yes, it'll be taxable more than likely, but it probably won't be taxed at a very high rate. Great question, Ruth. Any other questions come through?
No, not yet. What about the bill, like, for our clients, like the RMDs? Is there anything in there about RMDs?
Okay, so if you guys aren't familiar already, the RMD calculation has changed. So now, at 72 years old, people are required to pull money out of an IRA. It's likely that in years past, they delayed the RMDs 1 year. That has not come through, but they may eventually say, hey, if the stock market is still down towards the end of the year, RMDs may be delayed a year. But there hasn't been any changes in RMDs. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the way forward. So when we look at what's happening in the stock market, probably the most important thing to look at right now is the country of Italy. If you look at Italy, they're not as wealthy as Americans. They don't have health systems like we do. They smoke. They all live together with their families. I mean, what you're seeing is Germany, the death rate is really low. Italy, the death rate is really high. And part of that, in my opinion, is because of culture. You know, German culture is, hey, you're 18 years old, get out of the house, get away from me. Italian and Spanish culture is grandparents and great-grandchildren all live together. So whenever you look at the virus in Europe appeared to have started mainly on the ski slopes in northern Italy and Switzerland. And so what happened is, a lot of these young people in Italy and Spain and France and Germany, they went skiing. Then they came home. And what did they bring their grandparents? The coronavirus. And so when you look at Italy is the great subject here because Italy did not take it seriously. They let the virus spread to the whole country. They even did you have 3 days to get out. So everyone that was in northern Italy fled to southern Italy and then went back home. And so it spread through the whole country. And so when we start seeing Italy, which we're seeing this week, plateau, and maybe even the deaths drop, that's when we know probably that's how long it's going to take. You know, we know that the Chinese have announced they're going to reopen the city of Wuhan on April 8th, which is where the virus started. So that virus started sometime in January, got heavy, and April 8th. So we know that's probably a 3-month period. But if Italy takes 8 weeks, then we know it's probably going to be what? 8-week period here. If it takes 4 or 5 months, 4 or 5 month period. And so the market's going to look at Italy and say, what happens in Italy? Because it's, China is not a Western free country. We don't know if they're telling us the truth. Italy, they've got news reporters and video everywhere. And so Italy is ground zero for knowing what's going to probably happen. It's not going to happen here because whatever happened in Italy is probably going to be worse than what happens here. Because we've already shut down our country to some extent. The Italians did fast enough. So Italy kind of gives the market worst case scenario, in my opinion. So Italy is the biggest way forward for us, more important, because people want to feel good about going out. I mean, we know when this is over, it's going to take a little while for certain industries to really pick back up. Disney World and cruise ships are going to have a little hard time because people are starting to be a little nervous. But probably driving to national parks or other types of vacation experiences will go up. But some of these other things may have a little harder time. Most people that die from coronavirus, the median age is 80 years old. That gives you an idea of most people that are dying. The good news for the market is, all these people staying at home, hopefully getting paid and having some income, there's going to be a lot of demand to get out of the house. There's going to be a lot of people that are waiting. And we're looking at right now. When I filled up for gas yesterday, I paid $1.28 for gas home. $1.28. Now, if you haven't noticed, little spiritual. Manchester still has Travelers, so they're charging $1.70. McMinnville apparently doesn't because they're charging $1.28. So I'm not telling you to drive to McMinnville to get gas, but I'm just saying there's a huge price difference in gasoline. Nashville is still pushing $2.20 a gallon. And so when you look at when this thing ends, gas is going to be cheap, interest rates are low, everything that leads to an economic recovery is in place. It just takes what? Time and really Italy recovering. When Italy recovers and the U.S. sees it spike and then the drop off, when those things happen, it'll make a difference. In 2009, you guys remember, the economy contracted dramatically. It went down dramatically. But the stock market went up. Because one of the things that happens is if the stimulus bill is not enough, if the federal government does not do enough to keep people's jobs, companies will eventually what? They're going to lay people off. And when they fire people, their costs are going to do what? And their profits are going to do what? So if the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve don't do enough, eventually companies will do it for themselves. And that's the good thing is stockholders. It's a tougher situation from a political standpoint, but the realistic thing is companies are in the business to make money. So when these things happen, guess what they're going to do? They're going to make money. They're going to find a way to make money. And so that's what we're looking at here. Now the good news is for us as investors is 2008, the recession was about debt. 2001 was about terrorism. This one is about a health issue. It takes a long time to get out of debt. If you owe more money than you make, it's very hard to get above water. Terrorists, we're still trying to kill it. Health issues, look, there are, I'm sure, many brilliant people right now thinking, if I cure this, I can become a billionaire. My great-great-great-grandkids aren't going to have to work. Okay? And so the good thing about capitalism is the reason why HIV has a cure, the reason why there is no more polio, the reason why the flu with Tamiflu is effective is very simple. There's money in it. Well, if you didn't think there was money in curing coronavirus, you're crazy because everyone's talking about what? Coronavirus. And that's what we're going to see here is this is going to be cured. And hopefully, the sun's coming out today. Hopefully it'll keep coming out. It'll get hot and it'll burn this off. If you notice, the temperature in Rome, when I looked it up yesterday, was averaging 40 to 50 degrees every day. I'm sure in northern Italy, where it's really bad, it's probably in the 30s and upper 40s every day. So just imagine when it gets 80 degrees out here, it'll help. And so we're not that far away from having that happen. But as always, thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please give us a call. 931-728-2130, 474-2130, or you make a comment in the video, we'll respond to it. Also, we've started a new process called Redtail Speak, which is our texting service, which I believe I talked about in the first part of the video. I don't know if I covered it or not. But please sign up for this service. It's a great way to get immediate notification. If we do an investment insight every week, which we're planning on doing a short one, this is a way for us to get information. Hey, this is going to be this time, this day. We send out to you. If for some reason there was, with more mobile services, if our phones for some reason there was a problem, you could text us. It's another way to reach us and for us to reach you. And so we always appreciate the opportunity to serve you. We hope that you found this video of value. And really, always bear in mind, we keep that sign in our office. Keep calm and carry on. Winston Churchill posted those signs in every train station in Great Britain in World War II. Because when the Germans looked like they were unstoppable, they were going to conquer the world. They'd beat the Russians, they'd beat the French, they'd beat every country in Eastern Europe, and they were basically about ready to beat the British. It was, hey, keep calm, carry on, we're going to be okay. And if Great Britain and the United States, if we can make it through World War II, if we can make it through the 2008 recession, if we can make it through 2001, if we can make it through this, from a big picture standpoint, we're going to make it through this too. And it's not going to be, I don't think, even near some of the worst events in our history. But thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.